I used to be afraid of you, but I don't think I am anymore.
There's nothing to fear except God.
For me, God is a disease.
It's the things that make you look at what you thought you saw in a different light. The hole in the Pentagon being too small for a plane. The lawn isn't mussed up. The government's not showing the plane hitting when many cameras photographed it.
There's nothing to fear except God. God. God.
Oh, if you already know the answers to your questions, then why ask?
It's too big.
Back and to the left. 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 Back and to the left.
Hello, the listeners of Half of God's Face podcast are back with special guest to the podcast, Sean Fahey, who is an Irish man, and he is here to fight Austin to the death. No, I'm just...
Man, I haven't spoken with Austin in years, and I'm supposed to fight him? All right.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but Sean is a very knowledgeable film viewer and also a diehard Pynchon guy, so we wanted to get him on because we just saw fucking Inherent Vice on 70 yesterday, and it's,
I've
been one of my favorite films.
I've been looking forward to this all week, so thank you for having me.
God bless. So, Austin, what do you have to say, Austin?
I was pretty jealous when you guys saw it on 70 last night. I saw it on a Game Boy.
Oh, wow.
No, I saw it last night with my girlfriend, and
How it was intended to be seen.
it's more funny than I even remembered.
Oh, yeah.
Say it. Well, I mean, the laughter at the music box was just so infectious.
It was crazy, man, because I've seen the movie like a bunch with audiences and stuff. Maybe one or two. I mean, I saw it in the theater when it came out at least 2 or 3 times, and I do remember being in an audience that like just wasn't laughing very much because people are just confused, like
Well, I
the
mean,
normal
also,
audience.
don't you think that, like, when it first came out, it's like, oh, the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, like the guy who made The Master, and so you
Right.
have to like come to the theater and like sit down, be quiet, and let it like do its thing. But like as time goes on, I think people are like, no, this is a broad comedy inspired by like Naked Gun and
Yeah, that's one of the big influences. Because didn't he say it's like Naked Gun? Like there was like a show connected to that he like
yeah.
would be watching.
Because at the New York Film Festival, he did a conversation with Kent Jones where he just he showed
Right.
clips from Mondo Hollywood, but he also showed clips from the Naked Gun TV show, and he was
Right.
just like, these gags were very important when like crafting the jokes for Inherent Vice.
Exactly, because Inherent Vice kind of has almost a playtime type of thing going on at times because you're overloaded with so much information because of the voiceover and the music at the same time as you're seeing things in the frame, and there's just so many jokes that you can like miss. One of my favorites that I remember picking up like 8 or 9 times into seeing the movie was the part where Bigfoot is. He says to Doc, "We had to tow your car. It was parked illegally." And then literally when he pulls up to the loan shark's place, you see him walking and you see him look backwards at his car, and the voiceover is just amazing in that moment. So you're kind of more focusing on the voiceover and the music. But he's looking backwards, and the more I saw the movie, the more I was like, man, I think he's looking to see if he can park there. I think he literally did anticipate that he couldn't park there. And then so when Bigfoot rubs it in his face, you could just tell he's like, bro, I checked. I thought I could park there. It's like his internal, and that's just like a joke that, but I mean, compared to the book, there are different all those people walking behind him when he goes into Chick Planet Massage, like all the intelligence operatives or something. That was explained in such a different way in the book. It's not like in real time do you realize that. It's later that he figures out that there was some elite team of people that were right there the whole time.
I think another part of that scene is just like what we're talking about, like the tonal, just the tonal gambit that movie takes from going from like broad comedy to like conspiratorial like horror is like the voiceover really changes the course because it's very goofy. Doc's on PCP and his cohort Bigfoot is driving him around, and then Joanna Newsom says the great line "Dopers ESP Doc," and you're like, "Oh wait,
Oh,
this
it's
is a
perfect.
this is a civil rights violator we're talking about. He's about to plant all these drugs on this hippie, who he's been like depending on for like investigations." Um, Beautiful print, right, Zach?
Oh man,
God,
seeing it on 70 was pretty insane. I mean, just
I've
with like
never
the
seen the movie.
music,
I've never seen the movie look like that. I've owned a Blu-ray of it for the longest time, and it looks great.
right?
But all the silhouette work, all the graininess, it was like you could really sense like the. I mean, I think you know this, but like most of the film stock was just stuff he had in his garage for the
Oh wow,
longest
I
time.
do remember maybe hearing that a while ago
Yeah.
because this was. Sorry, what are you saying?
No, he like brought his DP into his garage, and he was like, "We have to use this. It probably looks amazing."
Is it like from the 60s, like the film stock, or the 70s, or
Yes, like probably late '60s, early '70s of that era.
wow,
I'm not sure like the whole movie was shot on it, but like I think a lot of passages were.
right? Because it is. I think it was shot 35, and then we saw basically a blow up
Yeah,
print, which is awesome. I love when they do that because it's
he's
just
he's he's done that for his past couple movies. I know like One Battle After Another is Beast Division, like the Brutalist.
right.
Um, but Phantom Thread was 35. I saw a 70 millimeter print of it.
Yeah.
Licorice Pizza is the same thing.
No, yeah, and when Boogie Nights was over here on 70, they did the blow up, and it was crazy.
That
It
was
looked
amazing.
it looked incredible, but no, yeah, I mean, like you're saying, the opening of the movie is so like haunting to me as far as Shasta getting in the car and driving away, and then Vitamin C starts playing, and it follows him down the street, and he meets up with this guy, and in the book, his name is described as written like Dennis, but it rhymes with penis.
Yeah.
So then it's like his name is Dennis. And so they're walking right by, 4210, the Strand or whatever. They're going down that way towards presumably they're saying like a pizza spot or something, or maybe they go somewhere else and then they meet up with Sortilege. But they're going down, and in the far background, you can see. I forgot where I read this, but I've heard people propose that you can see the golden fang in the shot, in the far background, in the water, in the first 5 minutes of the movie, or first 8 minutes of the movie. And that was another thing that I just had no idea that was even possible. As far as just all the information that's like overloaded into the film. And yeah, I mean, it's hilarious. It's really, I've always thought it was like an insanely funny movie, but last night was incredible. Having people really laugh at every single bit, because Joaquin is just so funny too. Even in more quiet moments, he's insanely hilarious.
Well, we got into this a little bit last night, Zach, and I kind of wanted to talk about this with you in Austin because we've seen this a lot, and
Hmm.
it's a very dense movie in terms of like information, and like it's a Pynchon adaptation. So I was like, when after the movie we were talking about what were things that we understood better than the last time we watched it. And
Right.
another thing I was very excited to like get into was like we were talking about weird scenes inside the canyon,
Oh
and
yeah.
like one of my favorite parts of the movie is the Coy Harlingen stuff, where it's like
Yeah.
this surf rock band is being set up by the government to be like COINTELPRO informants, and they have to like separate from their families and like just travel up the coast like protesting Nixon rallies and stuff, and like after reading that book, it was just like, oh, I've seen this movie like upwards of 10 times, but now I feel like I'm finally getting the reality of it. Um,
Oh yeah. The historical context is so interesting. But Austin, do you have an answer for? Did you see anything new in the film?
Well, I was thinking about this is related to that. I think this movie would have done better if it came out maybe 10 years later because I don't necessarily think it's like a pro conspiracy, but I can see a lot of people that are into some pretty deep shit loving this movie
Mm.
because it's when you zoom out of it, it is kind of political in a way.
Right.
Oh,
And
extremely.
I remember watching it 10 years ago and not even that just went completely over my head. But yeah,
Was that?
I was definitely thinking about it more politically last night.
Yeah, no, because it's like the first time I saw it, like I had not read any Pynchon, I think, and I was because and just knowing Paul Thomas Anderson, you follow like all of these characters, and like every new face that comes to you is like giving you all this information, and like I had two friends named Zach at the screening last night, and the other Zach, it was his first time seeing it, and I asked him like what he thought of like the premise or like the plotting and stuff. And he was like, "Oh, I couldn't follow any of it." It's like it really is a movie designed for numerous viewings because there's so much dialogue that like gets lost in the music or lost in like overlapping dialogue, and you could really see his love for Robert Altman and Jonathan Demme in terms of like
Mhm.
characters giving you a whole bunch of information, and you don't need to like follow all of it because one, you just love to watch them act, but also you'll get it on the second viewing or you'll get it on the third viewing. Um,
Right.
and hopefully, if it comes to a theater near you, you'll get it on that upwards of 10 viewing.
I also didn't realize how many times there's a slow push in
No,
Oh yeah,
exactly.
because I kind of tried to do something cheeky last night. I was gonna start like tallying each time there was one, and I made it to because I was like, I'm pretty sure almost like every shot in this movie is a slow push in, and then I made it to I think three, and I just forgot and got so more. I got immersed in it and just was like, oh yeah, I was gonna do that, and I completely forgot.
I was wondering, do you guys know the story about how he came up with that idea to have all those slow push-ins on scenes? It's one of my favorite making of film stories.
I don't.
Okay,
Yeah, I
so
think I've probably heard this at some point, but you can bring it
it's
up
like
again.
whenever I watch the movie, I always try and wonder when it starts because he says that he's filming the scene with Joaquin and Reese Witherspoon where they first meet after after Bigfoot like beats him up in the rich couple's house,
Right.
and they were filming that scene, and it was a normal like shot reverse shot scene like in like a lunch area, and it was outdoors, and they're dealing with like the sun is changing. They start shooting at 8, and then by like 10 or 11 the sun's above them, and they're like, okay, we've lost all continuity, and then they break for lunch, and PTA is just like really stressed out, and then he sees that park bench, and he's like,
Right.
you know what? Let's just redo the whole scene. We'll put some dolly track down, and then we'll just get all the dialogue in this one slow shot. And then he said the scene became fun again because
Yeah.
they were so worried about all this technical stuff.
There was
And
the scene with Reese Witherspoon and Doc on the bench.
Oh yeah.
where we first meet Reese Witherspoon. So my
Right.
question to you guys
I do remember
is,
that story. Yeah.
but basically what I'm saying is that like when did that visual like language start for the movie? Because he does it the whole film, and I wonder if he had to like reshoot other scenes that were like traditional back and forth like coverage. Because like was that the first thing he's because the whole that's the visual language of the movie, constantly peering in to listen to a
Right.
conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it happens when he's visiting the house and all the LAPD are like jumping in the pool. There are just these slow push-ins, like when you walk in, and then he's sitting and the housekeeper sticks her ass in his face, and the camera is just
Yeah,
slowly creeping in. It's pretty early that he's doing that. I mean, a lot of
he
people
does.
kind of mentioned because I love that Owen Wilson scene has always been one of my favorites when they're whispering in the house and the camera is just I feel like that's the pinnacle of that kind of slow push in scene. It just has this great tension and people whispering and stuff. You kind of want to lean in too just to hear it. But no, it starts pretty early for sure. And
Well,
PTA has always been known for camera motion, but it's really the push in, like you're saying, in this one is his key camera technique.
well, the first time he does it is with Sortilege in the restaurant after Shasta comes back in the
Yeah,
beginning.
yeah.
And like this movie must have been like a nightmare to schedule in terms of like there are so many characters and most of them have to interact with Joaquin. So I wonder like what order they shot everything in, if the first time he had that idea was with Reese Witherspoon.
Mhm.
And the great thing it does is that it makes like he doesn't have to do too much cutting, because like if you do a long camera shot like that, it's
Mhm.
not one shot, it's a million. The camera is just changing into a close-up. And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
one of the things that you told me, Zach, that I was really looking forward to was during that Owen Wilson scene, because you told me if you look in the background, there's one guy
Yeah.
who comes up twice, and
He
I saw it.
suspiciously he suspiciously walks by the window multiple times, and he's like wearing he has a huge like mustache, and just the way that the movie and Pynchon in general, he always has this little. He'll always throw a sentence in where he suggests that people are faking it. It's not just that Doc, and it's like Doc wearing a wig. There's always people that you meet them and you don't know exactly what their intentions are, or maybe they're a decoy or they're intelligence agents and stuff. And no, that scene especially, I like look at that guy in the glass and I'm like, damn, he's just watching. He's clearly like watching Doc and Owen Wilson. And I never even noticed him for years of watching this movie. It was only the recent viewings that I realized that he walked by the glass twice, that it wasn't just one time that this guy walked by in the background. So there's a ton of shit like that in this movie that's pretty insane. Like I said, he like loads the frame. But getting back to like the historical context thing, that's hilarious. But it's so funny to me too that the FBI is explicitly telling him at one point, work for us and join COINTELPRO. It's just like a notorious FBI operation to infiltrate the peace movement. And basically that's kind of what Vineland is all about. It's like,
Yeah.
isn't it the main guy's wife that is basically in COINTELPRO? She infiltrates the peace movement and tries
Yeah.
to.
Well, they're separated like most of the book, if I remember correctly.
Mhm. No, it's fascinating because I have watched like little docs on Pynchon, and it's people that were friends with him, kind of saying what his mindset was during the time. And yeah, I mean, he was living in Manhattan Beach in the late '60s, and it really was a vibe. I mean, you really would look at people, you'd be like, "Are you a Fed? Like, are you a fake hippie?" Like not just there are all these hippies doing drugs, and then there's the cops, and there are feds and stuff, but people were literally like working undercover. And that's why it's so funny. That's like a great Pynchon joke, is like the fact that the Ouija board, that's one of my big questions about the film, because in the book, Sortilege isn't as big of a character. She's important, but PTA uses her to get out a lot of great Pynchon sentences that her character doesn't say a lot of the things that she says in the movie, because it's just putting in way more beautiful sentences, which I love. But I love how in the movie she warns them that it's a police trap. So the Ouija board tells them to go to this place that's an empty lot, and it becomes the Golden Fang building. And they go to this thing. You're like, wait, how does a Ouija board tell them a phone number? And then they call the number, and it's like, hello, dopers. We come to this location
You
for
want the
free
dope?
for free dope. And Sortilege is like, no, it's a police trap. But
I
then
love the
no, sorry,
line on the
what?
phone. I love the line on the phone where it's like, "The sooner you come, the more there'll be left." And I'm just like, "Oh God, it's so." It's like whether it's real doesn't matter. Well, they don't get caught by any cops, but like they clearly just want to hear that there's dope out there.
Right. And then at the very end of the movie, when they're in the car together, which also is a different ending. I'm pretty sure in the book he's driving down the freeway by himself, and his Shasta just is a much more of a fixture in the movie. That's like one of the big changes as well. That PTA kind of made it more. It made it sadder, like, but in that ending scene, Shasta says to him, oh, maybe she's the one setting us up. It was her Ouija board. She says
Mhm.
that when they're driving off at the end of the movie, kind of suggesting that Sortilege is ultimately very influential, especially in the movie, and that also opens up this Pynchon conspiracy brain of like who's an informant. Like, I mean, he didn't know that Owen Wilson was an informant right away, and then he's just kind of, that's always the question in Pynchon is, are people what they're telling you they are, or are people working for the Fed in some capacity?
Yeah, and especially like the ending with Bigfoot like smoking the weed and becoming like a sort of like hippie monster. It's just like like there is this whole question of like, is Doc hallucinating? They keep asking him that question the whole movie, and what what is his trip basically? Like, I mean, he's like this flat top cop, but now he's speaking in like hippieisms and not as a
Right.
joke, as something that's very like authentic. And
Yeah.
there's
Dinas
a lot of
Dinas said
that
that
scene.
line where he's like, "Oh, you're insane. Far out. Where are you at?"
One of the things, there was one thing I wanted to talk with you about, Zach. It was
Oh God.
the what I think is the best scene in the movie um, was kind of ruined by the print last night.
Oh,
Oh no.
The Shasta Fe monologue. Austin, you're gonna hate this because I really felt. Zach, have you seen Masculine Feminine by Godard?
yeah, a while ago.
Okay, because there's a scene in that movie where like he's on a date and they're
Right.
projecting the movie wrong, and he's like, I can't focus on you. I have to go yell at the projector." And that
Oh
was
yeah, no,
literally what.
the projector was like off for like a split second.
Yeah, it was like 2 feet to the right, and there was like black screen, and it became like 185 rather than widescreen. And it's an amazing monologue where she's like completely naked and talking about like basically like Epstein shit, where it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
Mickey would share me with his friends, he'd bring me in on a leash and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
it's an astounding like push in scene because it's
Oh, I
so
mean, Jesus Christ, bro. That's like
it's
the
so
greatest sex scene ever.
yeah, it's so gradual, and then she starts masturbating on his lap, and she comes like right into the camera, and it
Yeah.
changes the whole dynamic of the shot. And the
You
whole
hear
time
what's
I'm like, put the fucking projector over a little bit because you're ruining the scene.
Oh,
And
I didn't even notice that when the scene was happening, but that's crazy because I noticed it at the tail end of the scene that the projector was moved over.
yeah, because they cut to the beach when Sortilege is explaining what inherent vice means, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's so white that the projector had to be like, oh shit, and they quickly adjusted it. But that really got my goat. I was like, come on,
That
man,
was annoying, yeah.
that's again, I think that's the best scene in the movie.
Oh, 100%. You hear his explanation of how that scene happened too? He had like the funniest explanation.
No, I don't think I have.
Oh man. So he was asked because again, I mean, if there's any scene in the whole, I mean, there's a lot of crazy scenes where it's like, wow, I would love to be on set to see how he pulled off some of this. But that scene, it's like, how do you even do that? I mean, the staging of it. I mean, the
Mm.
fact that you probably have to have like a closed set because she's like naked, so there's probably like not that many people even on the set, and the fact it's a slow push in, and there are all these developments in that sequence where and again in the book it's kind of a funny thing, like it brings it up quickly that they fucked, and I think it kind of is, it makes it funny. It's like, oh, like there was spanking or something, and it's just kind of funny in the book, but in PTA, his version, it's this intense like climax of the emotion of the movie in a literal way and a figurative way, right? But he was asked about that scene, like, how did you shoot that, how did you achieve that? It's unbelievable, and he said something crazy where he's like, oh no, I mean, I just put the camera down and she just did it herself. That was all
Oh yeah,
Catherine. He's
and
like, yeah.
it's a
And
really strange thing he pulls off because like at this point in the movie, it's like an hour 40, hour 50 maybe. There's like 30 or 40 minutes left, and both big mysteries are solved by then. Like they find out where Mickey Wolfman is, and the newspapers see that he reemerges, and then they're like, okay, where's Shasta Fay? And then Shasta Fay just like shows up, delivers a monologue that gives you more questions than answers. Like, but the mystery is solved. Like we know where the two missing people are, and like the thing with that monologue is that you have to plant seeds for the rest of the movie, like that eventually lead to Adrian Prussia and the LAPD. But like, it really is a dangerous thing to do. Where it's like, okay, the movie could be over now, theoretically. Like, I mean, there's some great stuff to happen after that, but like, it really is a testament to her performance about how like she gets people to watch the movie for another like 40 minutes.
Oh yeah, no, because
I do remember thinking that myself when I was younger. Like, wait, this is the end, right? And then there was another big chunk, and I went, wait, what?
Yeah, no, there's a whole like shooting scene in the PCP, like Nazis and stuff. It's fucking. It really is
right.
Great. Like, there's some other noirs that I love, like where the mystery is solved like relatively early, and it really is the filmmaking that keeps you watching, or the comedy more like it, because
right.
God, we were laughing so hard in that theater last night, man. It was
so
funny.
No, it was the funniest it's ever been, and I've always thought it was hilarious. But every joke just went so hard. But no, I mean, I was really fascinated because again, that's the big change between the book and the movie is that Shasta it's really kind of a more melancholic vibe about Shasta in the movie. And the book, it has that in it. The book has that in it for sure. But you know, PTA very much kind of moved her into a central part. And I always love the fact that when he's talking to Mickey Wolfman, his main question isn't what is the Golden Fang? What is this operation? You're buying property. They're trying to get you to buy property in Vegas so that it doesn't look mobbed up, but you're really a front for a heroin trafficking thing. Like what's going on? No, he doesn't ask that at all. He asks, "Where's Shasta?" He gets to like the heart of this insane mystery, and the whole time you're kind of getting like this peripheral vibe of heroin trafficking and this closed system where then they can sell you dentistry, they can fix your teeth after they fuck you up with heroin, so it's like this closed business that's all connected. And no, he doesn't care about any of that. He just wants to get to Shasta. He discovers this entire mystery, and that's one of the reasons why this movie just gets better and better every viewing, and why I think it has such a strong emotional logic is it's about a guy that can't get over his ex, and rightfully so. I mean, she is she has just an incredible presence. I would love to see her in more films. I always was blown away by Catherine Waterston's performance, and no, that monologue is so great where she's like, they said something about it couldn't be insured because of, oh my God, these motorcycles are going by my window right now. Sorry, I don't know if you guys could hear that, but she's like,
no, I'm thinking of like the guys, the Aryan Brotherhood dudes.
I was about to say this.
Oh, good.
Did you guys hear that motorcycle?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, that was so loud. That's so funny. But no, she said it couldn't be insured because of inherent vice, and it's like glass shatters, ice melts, and then ex-old ladies. What happens? It doesn't work out. So Doc is just like in this loop of trying to get back with her, and it's not going to work. So that's more the emotional through line of the movie, even than this conspiracy. But his regret and love of this woman is what pulls him into this international thing, And man, I think one of my favorite lines in any movie ever is when he's lighting up the joint. And by the way, God bless that how many fucking joints he smokes in this movie. He smokes like 10 joints at least. And literally he writes on the zigzag papers, he says like to Shasta. It's like he's writing like a prayer, like a hippie psychic prayer to like the weed god or whatever the fuck. And then he starts smoking, and there's this incredible what is it? What's the term where it's like two images on top of each other?
Yeah, there's like a fade in to Shasta Fay, making like a third image over the.
Yeah, and then it's him smoking, and it's kind of giving you the sensation. And the line is, Doc could never figure out what Shasta might have seen in him, besides being just about the only doper she knew who didn't use heroin. freeing up a lot of time for both of them. I'm just going to read this whole thing. And it wasn't any clearer about what had driven them apart either. They each gradually located a different karmic thermal, watching the other glide away into different fates. Does it ever end? Of course it does. It did. And then it's like the phone rings, you know. So he's like brought out of it. That has always been one of my favorite moments because there's this, it's like a spiritual vibe to Inherent Vice that fits into, you know, astrology and stuff, and hippies believing in all kinds of different things, and you know, this idea that you imagine that your heroin addicted friends aren't dead. You just imagine them living like a different life type thing. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting spiritual things going on in the film that really just makes it so like beautiful.
Well,
But yeah.
another thing I wanted to talk about, because I think this will be interesting considering one battle after another, is like I think that the reason like PTA and Thomas Pynchon are such like kindred spirits is
Mhm.
that their sort of view of I guess how do I put, they're both like they're both like really, I think like in, how do I put this, like in spite of their like, you know, their acclaim and their just like PTA being like one of the great filmmakers and Thomas Pynchon being one of the great novelists, is that they're both like softies. They're both really emotional people at heart, even though there's like so much like conspiracy and so much like drama and like so many like cast of characters. At the end of the day, they're very like emotional people who care about like the relationships in their lives, and like that's something I love about Pynchon, where like, I mean, a book like Vineland that has like so many like, you know,
Right.
suggestions to like the violence committed by like governments and stuff. It ends with the final image in that book is a dog licking a girl's face, like at the end. And then even like Bleeding Edge, a book I love, like in post 9/11, where there's so much violence and like the .com era is really like accelerating the internet by like standards no one's ever seen before. Like the book ends with like a mom watching her kids go to school by themselves for the first time. So like they
Yeah.
really, they are interested in these conspiracies, whether they believe, you know, a percentage of what's being like put to paper or put to screen. At the end of the day, it's about like, you know, for Doc, it's not about the money. Like people, he gets offered millions of dollars by like a drug kingpin, and he's
Yeah.
like, no, I just want this couple to get back together. And he doesn't even take money from Owen Wilson or Jenna Malone. It's just like, I want this family to exist again. And then
Right.
like
Oh
again,
man, that scene
it's
also went so hard last night. Him meeting with the guy who like the lawyer guy, and
yeah,
another really funny joke that is hard to pick up on is they're literally in like they're in a like a suit and tie type of restaurant, and Doc is wearing like a Native American like dream catcher
he's got a dream catcher
as his
necklace.
tie.
And even before, he asks him like, does this place have a dress code? And he says, wear a jacket and tie. And
Yeah, exactly.
he gets the jacket right. There's no tie. It's like, it's so
He's
good.
wearing a dream catcher. It's
Mhm.
like that just makes me laugh. But
I was talking with my brother about that because we were driving home, and he said, I love that scene, but they're like talking about, you know, having sex with minors, and like people are laughing, and I'm like, I don't, he was like, I don't think that's funny. And I'm like, that's a, and I was like, I don't know, man, it's kind of absurd. It's like, I think it's kind of
well,
goofy,
he even admits that his
but
daughter isn't a minor in the scene.
yeah, they're always too young in a father's eyes.
Right.
But like, I mean, I think that's kind of the suggestion is like,
Hmm.
with like, you know, the heroin dealing dentists, and they just have all these like young women like coming in doing coke and like getting new teeth. Um, yeah, it's so complicated. So I was just like, I don't know. Do you feel that way about like Pynchon and PTA, Zach?
Oh yeah, well, definitely the Vineland. People were almost annoyed because Vineland came out 17 years after Gravity's Rainbow, and it had just an insane rollout where everyone in the literary world was like freaking out, really excited. He had really captured the imagination. And it was this thing where you had to go to his publisher or like his agent, and you had to read the manuscript in person. So every major newspaper and literary magazine and stuff, they all had to go in person in Manhattan and sit in in his agent's office and read the manuscript for Vineland. And they released, and so it was like the most reviewed book before it was even published. And it had a real buzz about, oh my God, Pynchon is back. And when that was published, people were almost disappointed that it wasn't as insane as Gravity's Rainbow. But like you're saying, I think the big connective tissue is Pynchon had kids. And I think the reason Vineland is about, a father and his daughter is because he, probably had a kid. And I think he had what I think happened with Pynchon is almost what happened like with Terrence Malick, where I think he had like a woman in California that he was in love with, and then either they broke up, and that's kind of like how you get into Vineland, or maybe they had a kid. I don't remember, but at a certain point, I thought he had a kid with a woman in New York. So then he ended up moving to New York City. I think maybe in the '90s, I want to say. But yeah, he was in California for a lot. But I think that's what really grounded him. And yeah, Vineland, it is one of his most accessible books for sure, and it really is heartwarming. Like, it really is like a heartwarming comedy about family. But Austin, you were texting me about your girlfriend's reaction to the movie?
Yeah, well, I was surprised because usually when I've watched it with people, my first thing I look over at them like, you like it, and they're like, yeah or no. I'm like, were you confused at all? And to my surprise, she was like, no, I think I got it. And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah, it's kind of just, you zoom out a bit. And then we started talking, and I kind of did an analogy like the movie's kind of a ball of yarn. Let's say, for the sake of the idea, this yarn has, I don't know, like 5 colors to it. And the movie is really presented like this ball of yarn is like in your eyeballs, and you can't really understand the lines and where they're going, but you just you zoom out a bit, and it's all there. It's actually, I mean, it is, the movie is, obviously the ride, but it's not like as uh confusing as really it's made out to be.
Hmm.
And I mean,
Well, you said she was laughing a lot, right?
oh my gosh, well, there's little things that we laughed at.
Bigfoot sucking a banana dick. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that, well, I mean, that was definitely the biggest
People were
laugh.
dying in our screening. But no,
There's
when he
little
eats the
things.
weed, that is insane. When Doc is crying after Bigfoot eats all his weed, that just goes so hard.
I remember watching this, and I mean, when it came out, you got to think of this was pre Phantom Thread.
Right.
So, to us in high school, PTA was like Jesus Christ, basically, because we loved Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood and The Master. We felt, I don't know if we really got that, but we felt cool because we saw it.
Right.
And I think that might be why this is really kind of, I think, where this is going to sound pretentious, but this is where I split off with my friends, I think, a lot with movies, because this movie's shot very, I don't know if like claustrophobic is the right word, but it there's not too much camera movement compared to other PTA movies. And
You're absolutely right.
the trailer kind of, obviously trailers, you want to get people to see the movie, but it almost seemed like it was going to be more of an action comedy, and
like a thriller.
yeah, and you kind of watch, and by the end of it, it's I think if There Will Be Blood and Boogie Nights are, in 2014 speaking, if those are like your favorite PTA movies, and I'm assuming most people that are aware of this director would say those at the time were his 2 best films, and you see this, you kind of go, what the fuck? Like, huh?
Can I pose a question? Can I pose a question to both of you guys? Because this is kind of related to what you're talking about, Austin.
Oh yeah, do it.
Yeah, so I have a friend who his personal opinion of PTA is that his later movies are much better than like his earlier ones, and it's because he thinks that PTA is a much better comedian than he is a dramatist. And I love all those movies. Like I love There Will Be Blood and I love The Master, but I do find that as I get older, I am resonating a lot with like Licorice Pizza, Inherent Vice, and Boogie Nights, the movies that are like more broadly comedic, and they use comedy to like get at the heart of that era, the way Boogie Nights does, where it's like the transition from 70s to 80s pornography, and Inherent Vice with like the 60s hippie dream with like the 70s like hangover waking up. So I
Yeah.
was just wondering, do you guys have any like opinion on like, do you like PTA more as a comedian or as like a dramatist? And how you like, I guess, view his filmography in that sense.
Oh Jesus. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Zach,
Well, I
Zach,
could.
oh shit.
No, I mean, Inherent Vice is my favorite PTA, and I don't know. I mean, I was frustrated the way people reacted to Licorice Pizza because I had numerous people who 100% had only, at least one of my friends, like a musician friend, he had said, "Oh, The Master is obviously like better than Licorice Pizza," and I'm just kind of like, "Yeah, but nobody liked The Master when it came out, and I did. I was like the only person, and now you're acting like Licorice Pizza isn't good because it's not serious." So I don't know. I mean, the big distinction between the different parts of his career, is he was a lot more reliant on, because he's such an incredible writer, and I'm pretty sure Magnolia, it's everything he wrote, and same thing with Boogie Nights. Like these are very faithful to the script, but when he shot Punch Drunk Love, he tried to do something very loose, and it didn't exactly start then. But with There Will Be Blood, his form started to evolve, and what people say about this is that he would write scenes and he would be fluid with changing the setting in a moment's notice, and he would allow a lot more improvisation. So in There'll Be Blood, there are scenes that he would write in the church, and then all of a sudden Daniel Plainview is, trying to cover him in mud out in the mud fields or some shit. And there's this fluidity to it. And with The Master, there is an incredible amount of footage that is not in the movie. And there's a lot of very improvisational, just following Joaquin Phoenix doing things. And that movie is a lot. That movie is so inspiring because the narrative is very open ended and it doesn't have like this narrative push to it. It's a lot more open ended of what is the momentum of this movie. I'm confused with like the inspiration, but it's still obviously one of his best films. But no, I do think the later PTA are better than the earlier ones, though. I do think that he's starting to merge stuff he did in Boogie Nights. He's starting to bring it back with like Inherent Vice and Licorice Pizza, But no, I like him more as like a comedian for sure. And There'll Be Blood is also hilarious, even though it's very serious. It's
Yeah.
insanely funny, yeah. So, but no, it's definitely interesting also tracking where Pynchon became influential for PTA, because there is kind of like a Pynchon feeling in Magnolia. Kind of, I don't know if he had read Pynchon at the time he made Magnolia, but he was working on. So he was 5 years off between Punch Drunk Love and There'll Be Blood, and he was working on the script for There'll Be Blood and The Master, and he was considering adapting any number of Pynchon for that 10-year period from 2002, from post Punch Drunk Love into like 2012. He had 2 or 3 scripts he was working on simultaneously, and then he did There'll Be Blood, The Master, Inherent Vice, all in a row. And it is interesting how in The Master there's a bunch of shit cut out of the movie. One of the parts was Freddie Quill looking for alligators in the sewers in New York City. I think he shot it too,
It's
and
crazy.
that's like straight out of V. Thomas Pynchon's V. There's a whole section of a guy going into the sewers and hunting alligators in New York City, and he runs into these like rats that have like Christian hierarchies and shit, and there's like a rat prophet in the sewers or something.
I mean, there's also like that happens with Inherent Vice as well, where you can watch some trailers where they have like completely different versions of
Yeah,
the
I
opening.
love the trailers because he uses unused material in the trailers.
Well,
Yeah,
I
no, I
remember
love that.
they're like loading that person into the gurney and they fall. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure
such
that's
a great
not in the
shot.
movie, right?
It's not. No,
Okay.
Oh yeah,
because that's right at, because I believe that's Glenn Charlock. Because that's right
Okay,
outside.
yeah.
That's right outside Pussy Eaters. Um, which I mean, it makes sense that he cut it because it's Bigfoot and Doc like sitting next to each other. Like he didn't just get arrested for murdering that guy. But it's so funny. It's so funny to put in the trailer. Um, the other version of that I love is in the Master trailer when Freddy has the gun. That's also not in the movie.
yeah. No, and then he jumped into the man. I gotta say, I used to just I haven't watched like a PTA interview in a minute, but when I was like in high school, I would just obsessive compulsively watch every interview and just memorize. And I still remember so many things from these interviews. One of his coolest stories. It was like to end a Q&A. Someone was like, "What was the craziest day you had on the set of The Master?" And he told this insane story being like, "Yeah, I had Freddie do all this stuff that was cut out of the movie. He went to a giant party for like sailors, right? And he's partying with all these sailors and trying to pick up chicks. And there's like a sex scene that was cut out. And then he jumps into San Francisco Bay. And then Joaquin Phoenix got hypothermia. And PTA is like, that's fine, that's cool, but we have to keep shooting. And he literally made Joaquin still shoot with hypothermia. So they went up in the forest and they were by these huge like trees, I think, which might actually be the same type of trees that you see in Vertigo. And
Oh, the
they
Redwood
shot
Forest.
yeah, and I think they shot a bunch of material, and I think a lot. What's really confusing is in this interview. So a weird thing happened too when I saw The Master in the theater. I saw it in the theater, and 6 months later, I got the DVD, and I remember thinking to myself, "Damn, is that did he cut?" So I honestly think he might have made cuts after the initial theatrical run because in this interview he says, "Oh yeah, that shot of the trees is in the movie." And I don't even remember it in The Master, the shot of the trees, but I do remember seeing this like clip of him like with these trees. But anyway, apparently they shot through the night, and I think it gets all the way to the party on the boat when he jumps on the boat and the music is swelling and you see Lancaster Dodd dancing with Amy Adams from a distance, and it's the wedding on the boat, and then it's this beautiful shot going underneath the bridge, right? And it's like sunset or something. And I think that was all in the same day they shot all this other material, or within like a couple day period of all this other material that was cut out of the movie. And then PTA said his wife was pregnant, and it was like, "Yep, I'm about to have my baby." So then he literally on like a day without sleep goes and has his third child or something or fourth child, and I think he had considered casting his own children in The Master,
Oh
but
my
he
Yeah,
god.
ended up not doing it. But
well, because Maya Rudolph is his partner, and all of his children are mixed race, and he
yeah,
said that
yeah.
like it wouldn't make sense for a 1940s narrative.
Oh.
No, yeah. No, because it's interesting. I love that PTA will use actors that have never broken out before. Like is it Hong Chow that's the actress's name, right? Who plays?
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's incredible.
Yeah, she's blown up. Like that's one. I thought Catherine Waterston would have blown up more, but no. And I mean, talking about The Master, I mean, it's crazy. Like Jesse Plemons and Remy Malik are in the cast, and they're
well, Zach, you know what Catherine Waterston's first movie was?
her first movie was it that movie that he saw that was about like her being like a nanny or something?
No. Her first movie was Michael Clayton.
Oh no way! I do
What?
remember her and Michael Clayton.
Yeah,
Damn.
Oh shit.
she's like an intern. She has like 2 or 3 scenes, but that's her first movie.
No, that was great. No, he's amazing with discovering people, and I'm excited to see if Alana Haim is going to have a big role in One Battle After Another. I think she's in it again.
No, she
Right.
is. She's not in the trailer, which I think is interesting because I saw her like behind the scenes photos that get leaked. She's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
she's in scenes with Regina Hall and Leo, but not in the trailer, which I think is fascinating.
I wonder how long it's going to be, honestly, because I heard it was like they
I've
were
heard
showing
3
like a
hours.
3 hour. Yeah, they were showing a 3 hour cut, but they might still cut it down before it comes out.
Yeah, they got
I
some
think
time to
the
edit
current
it.
one was like 252, I think.
Oh
Hmm.
my god! Wow, that's. I mean, like it's still like Magnolia is still his longest movie, and I know he feels conflicted about the runtime for Magnolia.
Yeah.
Um, because there have been interviews where he's like, if I could go back, I'd sit my own self down, and I'd be like, take a deep breath, cut 20 minutes out, and
Yeah.
I was because I've been having this thought as well because yesterday, Austin, before I saw Inherent Vice, I saw the new David Cronenberg movie, and
Oh,
excellent. I absolutely loved it. I think, and that's his longest film, and you really feel like a new sense of like dedication to his material as like the film length goes on. So that's another reason I'm very excited for One Battle After Another because like I know he's wanted to make Vineland for the longest time. Clearly has a special place in his heart. Zach, when you were in LA, did Ben take you to the Vineland intersection, Vineland and Magnolia?
No, actually, I don't think I saw that.
Okay, because we went. It's nothing special. Like there's some grocery stores there, but like Vineland and Magnolia is an intersection that means a lot, I guess, to PTA fans.
Oh yeah, no, it was pretty surreal being in Manhattan Beach though, because
Hmm.
going right where the first shot of Inherent Vice is, and man, no, I mean, I really think that's the reason. Uh, putting yourself in that place is so interesting because nowadays it's like you have to be so rich to live there, but it's kind of surreal to think about people that like weren't completely loaded, just living on the beach in the late '60s. And yeah, I mean, I really
Yeah,
think that's why Pynchon wrote Inherent Vice is because he was like nostalgic for when he was writing his greatest novel, living in Manhattan Beach. And no, yeah, it's interesting because my own history with this movie is very long because I was such a fanatic PTA guy and I was so hyped for the master. I loved all the trailers and stuff. And when I was seeing the trailers for Inherent Vice and I heard the news that he was adapting Pynchon, that's like when I first like started reading Pynchon, you know. So I read Gravity's Rainbow probably 3 or 4 months before Inherent Vice came out, and basically I had this English class where we had to do final presentations, and very early on you had to come up with your idea, and I was like, damn, I'm just gonna read Inherent Vice and read Gravity's Rainbow and try to figure out how PTA adapted this. So my final English presentation my senior year of high school was a presentation on Inherent Vice, and it's related.
literally same.
Yeah, and how it was adapted, and it was one of my favorite moments throughout all my school time because I remember it just went really well, and it's such a complicated topic, and I feel like a lot of people in the class did a range of topics, but I just remember feeling very amped about explaining the plot and stuff and explaining details about Pynchon because yeah, I mean he just has a sense of humor. I mean there's Gravity's Rainbow is so crazy because it's like I mean it's basically kind of about MK Ultra type shit, and then it's like people getting Pavlovian conditioned to be you know agents for people that they don't even know. And I remember one part I quoted in my presentation was the part in Gravity's Rainbow where there's like an octopus attacks this woman, and Slothrop has to he has to
yeah,
save her
Katya.
from the octopus. And then as the scene progresses, he starts wondering to himself if the octopus was part of a conspiracy to get him involved with this woman.
Yeah,
And it's always shit like that with Pynchon, which I appreciate. There was another part in Gravity's Rainbow where there's like a Ouija section, and then there's this flashback of one of the people that works in the V2 factory, and it just starts describing his life. And you're like, oh my god, you get to a
mhm.
jump to talking about a character being introduced into the book for the first time from all these characters that are British intelligence using psychics during World War II to get information, which is basically like remote viewing insane shit that they're kind of hinting at. And he was writing Gravity's Rainbow, I mean, that was published in 73. Like the Church Committee, when all this shit hit the fan with the CIA and MK Ultra documents and stuff, and people being more skeptical of the Kennedy assassination, that really blew up in like 75, 76. So Pynchon was really ahead of his time with talking about intelligence agencies using weird methods or at least studying certain things. And I always think of that with Inherent Vice, because Inherent Vice as a book is just way easier to adapt as a movie. I mean, there's no way to adapt Gravity's Rainbow. But no, I am still very inspired when I think about different aspects. One of the things that really got in my head and I was obsessed with for a number of years, and I've read a bunch of essays on this too, a bunch of like Pynchon essays, but basically I had a teacher tell me that every character in Gravity's Rainbow is mathematically distributed, so they all come in and out of the book on like a mathematical distribution plot.
Fuck?
And I think they kind of bring it up. It's like the poison distribution is like what they're talking about with the rockets hitting all over London. And I don't know if that's actually true with the characters, but that theory was so interesting to me. And I never ended up figuring out if that's 100% true, but that's like a rumor about Gravity's Rainbow. And I did read this amazing essay. I did read this amazing essay about there's just real, he was literally quoting like German like rocket books in Gravity's Rainbow, and he literally had worked in a rocket plant or something. So Pynchon just knows so much about rocket science.
Pynchon worked for Boeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was like his first job out of college was writing copy for Boeing, and I think like right before he wrote V, I think in like the late 50s, early 60s.
Right.
And well, I mean, because when you were talking about the mathematical nature of Gravity's Rainbow, my mind went to one of my favorite gags in Inherent Vice are the phone calls between Doc and Bigfoot, where they're gradually becoming more and more similar. Like, and then it ends with them literally saying the same sentences at the same time.
Oh my god, dude, that hit so hard last night.
They come together
What?
exponentially.
Why are you sorry?
Yeah, because the phone call before that, they have their two old ladies, like, giving them the business. And then before that, every phone call is just, like, gradually unsimilar. And I think, like,
right.
I think that's part of it, where he just, like, these are two forces that have to come together, like, unstoppable force meets immovable object.
No, yeah,
and,
their friendship is really funny. But like you're saying, this is kind of heartwarming, their relationship. The fact that Bigfoot does all these things to try to fuck with Doc, but then at the end of the day, because he kind of sets him up to fail at times, but there are times he helps him out. And what I was really intrigued about, the more I see this movie, and I didn't even pick up on it like the first time I saw the movie, but all the references to Charlie Manson and in connection to all this shit we're talking about being suspicious of like feds and stuff, I think Pynchon very much is hinting throughout Inherent Vice that the Manson murders were some kind of deliberate attempt to kind of, to really make the peace movement look ugly and make hippies look like psychopaths that could, kill people. And some of the lines about Manson in this movie really get me. Like Bigfoot is jealous of Vincent Bugliosi. He said no Cielo Drive for Bigfoot, as in he's like jealous of the fact that this guy was like, the DA, or I don't even think he was DA at the time, but he ended up getting the case of all these people getting murdered, and Bigfoot is like jealous that he has this huge career. And then, Catherine Waterston is like, what would Charlie do? And then she says, do you want me to be like one of those Manson chicks? And so there's this whole subtext of people asking Doc, do you want to like brainwash me? Do you want me to be your like you were saying about Catherine Waterston and Mickey Wolfman in this like Epstein type situation where she's like a prostitute. And I also find that really funny that in Inherent Vice, he's following this trail, and every person he talks to has fucked his ex. Like every person, he's like, God damn it, she fucked a Nazi too.
That would drive any man insane.
He's like, wait a minute, the Nazi's 6'5"? God damn it.
Well, this also goes back to the Dave McGowan book, Zach,
Yeah.
because one of the things that really blew my mind is that I knew Charles Manson like was recording with like Brian
Oh
Wilson and was
yeah,
like slowly like getting record deals. One thing I didn't know was that Dennis Wilson and him were still hanging out like weeks after Sharon Tate was murdered before they arrested Charles
yeah.
Manson.
Crazy.
Like he would like go to his house to like smoke weed and do acid, and like we also talked about Captain Beefheart and his recording,
Yeah.
the way he recorded Trout Mask Replica and how similar it is to
It's like MK Ultra shit.
Manson. Yeah, no, and just like the ways that cults operate and the ways that normal people think cults operate in this miasma of the 60s. Like we keep quoting this line about the great beast where like the cops have three ways to tell if somebody's in a cult, males with short shoulder length hair, references
Yeah.
to the book of Revelations, and driving erratically. It's
Well, he's got his gun drawn out before he even approaches the car, and he's like,
he's like his fingers on the trigger and he's shaking it because he doesn't want to die, and that's like reasonable. But like this is the LAPD where they hate the feds, they hate the hippies, and they just like have no understanding of how cults work. Because again, this is the 60s. I mean, like, and this is another thing that Dave McGowan talked about is just like this is the rise of serial killers. This is Manson, Zodiac in a couple years.
Yeah, Zodiac
and,
was
like,
the same areas in a way.
and people really trying to understand like what is a cult. And I mean, even to like cult members, they don't understand because like you just have crazy people telling you, oh, this is your name now, oh, you fuck this person.
Yeah.
And just like because I mean, like, and Catherine Waterston like really gets at that in her monologue is like there is a calming nature in being told what to do, and like giving away like your decisions like to someone else. And there's a lot of that in like Pynchon's work overall.
Right.
And another thing I wanted to ask about is like because Shadow Ticket is coming out, and every Pynchon lead character is a detective in a way. Like, I mean, I just reread The Crying of Lot 49.
Oh hell yeah.
And that is about a woman through no like decisions of her own is forced to become a sort of like legal detective, like going through all this like paperwork of underground mailing systems, dealing with wills and stuff like that. And that goes all the way up to Bleeding Edge, which is about, a single mom who like loses her accounting firm and she has to do like detective work for accounting businesses. Like people like, she's like a private IRS like agent of some sort.
Right.
And then like Shadow Ticket, he's doing it again. It's about like a former strike breaker who's now a private detective. Like he's constantly interested in this idea of people trying to figure stuff out or like being forced into these mysteries. Against the Day maybe less so because there's just like so many characters.
Yeah, it's a bit more sprawling
in that book. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I mean going to the weird scenes inside the canyon, and that book is just so inspiring because there is something weird going on as far as oh my god, another fucking bike. Literally though, it's so weird that all these musicians moved to California at the same time, like apparently not connected to each other, and that's kind of what Tom O'Neill with his Chaos book goes into is the fact that not only did all of these musicians all move there at the same time, which is kind of weird because like Laurel Canyon, at least in from the opinion of Dave McGowan, wasn't like a hot spot at that time for music, which it became instantly when all these like great, like Jim Morrison and Frank Zappa and all these people moved out there. And Tom O'Neill says Jolly West, the dude who was potentially involved with Manson, who, visited Jack Ruby in his prison cell, and then Jack Ruby went insane. Like he was the guy that said that Jack Ruby went insane after he like interviewed him, Jolly West, who, ends up coming out in documents as being an MK Ultra doctor. And he also moved to LA, or not LA. He was the that clinic, right? You know what I'm talking about, Sean? The
Yes.
forgetting what the clinic is called. The Haight Ashbury.
Chris Kyladon.
Haight Ashbury.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
in the
that
canyon.
that
Yeah.
could be a little bit what like the Chryskylodon Institute is as well.
Oh,
And it's like
absolutely.
the opposite kind of thing because but it's this idea that they're getting all these people because they're smuggling the drugs in, right? They're smuggling the drugs in and they're pretending like they're caring for people. And kind of the connection between McGowan and Pynchon is no, I mean some of this does feel a little bit control. Like someone is controlling these mass movements. No, I don't think I go as far as McGowan, and I think that every single line of like a song is like written by an agency. I think, but I mean, there's a part in that book. I want to say that the Grateful Dead got all their acid from like the Haight Ashbury or something. And it was
Yeah.
literally like a CIA guy connected to MK Ultra gave them all their acid. So every Grateful Dead concert was like all the acid was provided by the CIA is like one of Dave McGowan's biggest claims in the book. And
Even like Ken Kesey and his merry band
yeah,
like traveling like giving like peace talks. Like I think that acid came from the same place.
no, yeah, and I read this book, The Phoenix Program, which is a horrific one of the most horrifying psychological operations in the history of United States military. And kind of what happened with the Phoenix Program is they were using this it was basically psychological warfare where they would like torture people and capture VCs in Vietnam and like throw them into dungeons where they had no rights and everyone was dying and they were killing people's families and just insane shit. But at a certain point, the pressure of the anti-war movement, the peace movement in America became so intense. I believe LBJ was starting to get freaked out because the riots of 67 were crazy. And in October 21st, 1967, 100,000 people marched on the Pentagon for the peace movement. And there's a moment in the Ken Burns Vietnam series where you hear LBJ talking to Eisenhower on the phone, and LBJ says, that was the most vulnerable the United States government ever was when 100,000 people marched on the Pentagon. So when all of this was happening in 1967, going into 1968, LBJ and the American government started using people involved in Phoenix and aimed it at the anti-war movement. So they tried to infiltrate, and COINTELPRO is a part of this, right? It was kind of connected. And Angleton at the CIA, he did a joint operation with J. Edgar Hoover. Angleton would monitor all the international mail, and Hoover with COINTELPRO, because that was partly the infiltration, is you get fake hippies to go infiltrate the peace movement and then discredit them however you can, or like the guy from Veep who is like we like investigating black black hate groups, because that's what the FBI loved to do under Hoover. They hated black people, and Hoover, probably killed MLK and probably killed Malcolm X as well. But that'll be a different episode. But
You'll have to have me back for that one.
but no, legit, all this stuff is real. I mean, the FBI, I thought they tipped off the Chicago police about Fred Hampton, and then the police just went in and killed him. But it was off of an FBI tip, and then what's the woman from Bonjour Tristesse?
The movie?
Yeah, Jean Seberg.
Oh, yeah, from Breathless.
From Breathless, yeah. And then she killed herself because J. Edgar Hoover planted a fake story that she had got impregnated by a black like nationalist or something, or like by a Black Panther. And she ended up killing herself because she was so like upset that and I don't even think she had like a problem with that like on its face, but she like just the fact that she had to answer for who the dad of her baby was. She like went insane. So J. Edgar Hoover is one of the most negative forces in American history, and Pynchon really hints at a lot of this very directly, where he's just being like, guys, this was infiltrated in a way that it was from the top down. Like the intelligence agencies, they very well might have orchestrated all these people moving to this part of America at the same time. And they're the ones who provided the acid. All the acid came from the CIA and MK Ultra. That's where the acid came from. And then you ask yourself, where did the heroin and shit come from? It came from the Golden Triangle, which was the heroin operation out of Vietnam. And that's one of the big theories about Vietnam. And Owen Wilson kind of brings that up. He says, what would you do if your mom was strung out? And like, America is like somebody's mom and she's strung out. It's almost like war or the military industrial complex is like a fix for this beast of war profiteering. And the fact that you can make all this money on the back end, like we're saying, where then you sell them, we're gonna fix your teeth too. It's like the whole thing is rotten. The whole thing is fake. Every aspect of it is a setup.
And a lot of like the hospitals, it's just like a cycle to sell more drugs because like once you find like Japonica and bring her back to her family, she's just going to run away again and get clean at the institutes that are run by the government, just so they can like escape, buy more drugs, go back, put more money into these wellness clinics, and just go back and forth. I mean, I think like another big target in the Dave McGowan book is Timothy Leary and his complicity in all this. But like, fucking acid heads love Timothy Leary. They read his books, they buy them.
Right. Well, I've heard multiple authors say that he was 100% like a disinformation like agent of some sort, or that's like been said by a lot of people even before McGowan. So that's definitely one of his like safest claims, like in the book, because Leary definitely seemed to be trying to encourage a certain type of behavior that would neutralize the political potential of the hippies, because their whole movement was being anti-Vietnam. In the doc that I watched on Pynchon, there's this beautiful moment where one of his ex-girlfriends is talking and getting interviewed, and I think it's Inside the Mind of V on YouTube. I don't know if that's still up. Yeah.
Inside the Mind of V. It's up there. I watched it like a little over a week ago.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in a minute, but I'm pretty sure it's in that, where it's this beautiful moment where they're on the beach, Manhattan Beach, and Pynchon is literally, it actually might have been a different beach, but they're on the beach, and Pynchon is saying to her he wants to come to Chicago to take part in the protests against the Vietnam War. And his girlfriend is saying, Tom, don't do it. They're going to beat everybody up. It's going to be really violent. But he felt so opposed to the Vietnam War. And I think that's a big, people realize that there was opposition to the Vietnam War, but it's a huge moment in American history because, wars have been unpopular at different times, but that was the first time that, the movement in America was like, oh no, you're like a child killer. Like they were, calling the soldiers child. And it wasn't, it's not necessarily the soldiers who are to blame for the Vietnam War. I mean, it's the generals and LBJ and all these people. But it is fascinating to me that he was just in this moment. And that's, again, right when Inherent Vice takes place. It's right after all this shit at the fan. It's right after Charlie Manson, too, which, like I said, I mean, he really made being a hippie kind of a dangerous thing. And it wasn't, you were kind of looked at as like a loser or like a freeloader or something before, or you were just a crazy person if you were a hippie. And then Manson, all of a sudden it's like, oh no, you're a killer, and then Jim Jones right after that. And a lot of people speculate about Jim Jones potentially having weird kind of CIA connections here or there. And, maybe he was similar to Manson because he also brainwashed everybody. And, Jim Jones, he had a really good beginning. I mean, he was a white preacher that loved black people, and he was for giving black people opportunities, and he would help pay people's rent and stuff, and he built this whole congregation of he was basically like an MLK type of freedom walker or something, right? Jim Jones. And then he just went completely crazy, and he went crazy, and then he ended up, making everyone commit suicide. But there is an open question, I would say, in the brain of a Thomas Pynchon type person is like, are Manson and Jim Jones connected? Because that's like one after the other of kind of the same story, like a guy having just insane control of all these people and kind of has left-wing beliefs. I mean, these are left-leaning people that end up really putting a bad face to, because again, I mean, Jim Jones, he went on all these rants against imperialism, I mean, and obviously Manson was seemed pretty racist as well. So I'm not saying his ideas are. I'm not saying
Yeah.
these guys all had great ideas, but
Well,
they had a kernel. They had a kernel of something good, and then they kind of got co-opted in this way where they went crazy with like drugs.
yeah, and I think like this is why Inherent Vice kind of feels relevant to today, because I do think it's a very a common story of people who felt so burned by the Bernie loss in 2016 that they go so far to the left they end up on the right,
Yeah.
and they feel the only way they can make any change is by uh, like being Trump supporters or like
Hmm.
vaccine conspiracists. Like I mean, like what you said, like these are leftists, but
Right.
like Charles Manson, very racist individual. Um, another thing. This is kind of like a thing I wanted to ask you guys, kind of bringing it back to Inherent Vice, is something I really focused on last night, Zach, is like the final scene when the Golden Fang, the boat,
Hmm.
is being like taken down. There's a lot of narration, but the main dialogue is that how'd they find them? And Benicio del Toro says, Department of Justice. And then Joaquin is like, so justice has been done? And he's like, basically. So I wanted to ask you guys, by the time Inherent Vice has ended, do you feel that justice has been done or that it's just going to keep going? Because there are still like, I mean, Japanka's dad is still a lawyer. Like, he has his drugs. Like,
Right.
that's not gone. Like, there's still stuff happening, but like the movie does have a conclusion that feels good. So I was just wondering how you guys feel about that, since we're talking about, you know, Manson and Jim Jones and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, Austin. What do you think?
I don't know. I think it is. I don't know. I think it's perpetual. It's kind of. I think it continues.
Like the Golden Fang isn't done.
Right.
They're not like obliterated by the movie's end. It's just the boat. Like,
Well, I think of it like sort of Paul Thomas Anderson's character. I mean, Doc Sportello isn't necessarily Anderson's, but these characters that don't necessarily change. You know, and it's I would almost I guess I'm comparing it to There Will Be Blood because that's a very famous cliche of you don't need the character to change, and obviously it ends up poorly in There Will Be Blood, but I think it kind of more works towards a more of a happy ending that he doesn't change. He doesn't kind of go into this I guess capitalistic world. I don't know. Because Doc's doing his own thing really in the own like throughout the entire film, and it almost seems that it serves to benefit him. I would
oh yeah,
say.
he gets his girlfriend back.
Well, what's
It doesn't mean they're together.
right. I think I don't know. It seemed like at least last night when I watched it, it seemed basically after the first Shasta scene that she almost seems to me like a hallucination throughout the rest of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sortilege is like that too. She'll.
Well, Sortilege just like doesn't exist,
Yeah.
and I had a conversation with my brother last night where it was his first time seeing the movie, and he was like, "Is because he picked up on so wait, she's in the car telling him what's happening, and then she disappears. So is she like not real?" And I just smiled at him, and I was like, "You get it." It's like, it was like, and I was like glad that he was like putting that together because it is a really cool way to like handle a narrator or unreliable narrator, however you want to see it, and also like getting into the drug fueled mindset. And as it comes to hallucinations, like one of the big things cut out of the book is an LSD scene with Doc. Like he takes acid on the beach with Sortilege, and
Right.
he doesn't do any acid in the movie. It's suggested that he has like in the past, but like the closest he gets to that is the PCP scene where they do reference the effects of acid. One of my favorite lines is acid invites you through the door. PCP
God.
shoves you through it, slams the door shut, and throws away the key. Like, that's scary. That's really scary.
I was thinking of that. There's so many like nuggets in this film, and specifically that scene. Why is the guy with the swastika thing kissing Doc? And then I thought about the idea of ghosts in the movie. It's really it's subtle, and I haven't picked up on it. But when he's it's nighttime and he's looking through the binoculars at the boat after finding out he knows she's on the boat, and he like looks over and thinks he hears something. It doesn't sound like something just fell in the house. It sounds like somebody is in his house fucking something up. Like it actually. I was like, no, that's not just a noise he heard. That sounds like someone is in the house throwing shit around.
That's true.
Oh, it's an amazing moment. And I especially I love that because it's him looking through the binoculars, and then you see the boat, and then it cuts to a close-up of her, and you have no idea where she is. But as I was watching it last night, I was like, oh, she's clearly on the boat, and she's she's content. She doesn't look upset. She looks happy to be out there, and it goes back to that monologue we were talking about, where it's like your decisions are taken away from you, and there is a calm to that, which is frightening, but I understand it. It's very beautiful. There's so much, and this also goes back to what I was talking about with PTA as a dramatist. He clearly has a knack for making people laugh, but when he wants to flip that switch, and then the Nazi getting hit over the head with the toilet top, that no one laughed at that last night. But that could be interpreted as a funny moment, because it's it's a toilet, it's a Nazi getting his comeuppance, but the Joaquin's performance where he's just gone on PCP, and he's like, I'm going to die unless I do this, and then he smashes his head, he grabs him and just knocks him out. There's a lot of blood, and then he shoots somebody and kills them, and it's that.
He's bleeding out on the floor.
Yeah, and that's his testament as a dramatist, is that moment is not funny when it could very easily be funny. And I mean, we know music box audiences. Music box audiences will laugh at almost anything, whether it's laughable or not. And I think that's his talent right there, that he could switch off the laughs whenever he wants. And
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did anyone laugh at the movie when Sloane Wolfman just looks into the camera and says the meaning of that word?
Sloane.
When he's got the wig and he's meeting with her, and she just looks into the camera and says, "I think it's the
Kerskylodon means serenity."
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I've never seen that before in a PTA movie, when somebody just I don't remember. They just look into the camera and it means blah blah blah, word for serenity.
Yeah, I think there was a laugh there. Yeah, there was a laugh for that part. Yeah.
It kind of varies, because there's stuff that gets some chuckles, and then there are the bigger broad moments.
But there's so many things that are subtle. Why does Bigfoot Bjornsson have a bottle of Johnny Walker Red and his son's pouring it to him?
That got the thing that got a lot of laughs was when the son pushes the bottle and it lands perfectly in frame.
Yeah, no kid does that.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
That's a sophisticated bartender move. That's not something a child.
A crazy fat drink too.
Yeah, I would push against that, Austin, because I would say the child of a cop would do that.
Okay.
Just someone, I don't know, because it's it's clearly absurd, but I just feel Bjornsson, being who he is, he would be hey son, pour your old man a glass of whiskey for me, please.
Well, it kind of reminds me of Boogie Nights, when Alfred Molina has that kid throwing firecrackers.
Oh yeah, that's another thing where it's that's a very dramatic thing to make you feel uncomfortable, but it's so absurd it makes you laugh every time the fireworks go off.
Yeah, another great scene. No, yeah, going back to your question, because did want to grab a drink during the movie. I was like, okay, this is like my favorite scene. I'm gonna go grab a drink right after this scene because I remember what happens. Like, sort to answer your question about was justice served. I think
Mhm.
post Gravity's Rainbow, specifically Vineland, Bleeding Edge, Inherent Vice, those books, there really is like a soft landing as far as each of those books. You kind of get introduced to this crazy international conspiracy, and then you have this soft landing of, oh, but you have your family. You still got your family. You have people like you love and stuff. And I think that's was one of the major pivots from older Pynchon versus the younger Pynchon. He was a lot more content with in Gravity's Rainbow, having characters like dissolve and like it being like really wild and not having this emotional like moment. But I love that scene when Sortilege, because Doc is kind of fucked up. He's asking her for her advice, like what should he do, and she says, "What's gonna keep nagging at you in the middle of the night?" And he says, you know, I think it's either ex-old ladies and then it's saxophone players and little kid blues is what he
Yeah.
says because it just touched him. This idea that this father loves his I believe it's his daughter or maybe it's his son. I forget, but his baby, and it really touched him. He's like, man, I would love for this guy to be back with his family, and like literally this his wife like thought he was dead too. So then the ending of the movie, what's most important to Doc is getting this guy back. And I really think that is kind of an important Pynchon. It's an important kind of maturation of Pynchon kind of piece of evidence, I guess, that in Inherent Vice you get shown all this insane shit, and in Inherent Vice he goes to Vegas instead. That's where he has that Mickey Wolfman confrontation is in Vegas instead of at the
Yeah.
Kristallodon Institute is one of the changes. But I do think it's an interesting evolution for Pynchon to try to have something resolved, to have a character kind of, and I don't know, I think that's what's so enjoyable about Inherent Vice is it almost is not realistic in a way. The fact that Doc doesn't just get killed for seeing any of this, right? Like the fact that he is able to know too much, to really see the full scope of things that are going on. Like, they I feel like the movie brings up evil doers. And for him to have this look behind the curtain to see quote unquote these spiritually dubious evildoers manipulating people that have good instincts, and for him not being able to fix it but to have kind of this consolation prize is what makes that ending so beautiful, of that last track when he picks up Owen Wilson and he walks out and he gets in the car and he's like, "You're one dangerous hombre, drive," and it's that shot like, and that part is just so moving with like the music and stuff and the sun, and it really does feel like an emotional resolution, even though you feel like you feel like he didn't really end up making an impact. I guess I think that's just kind of a reckoning that Pynchon went through in his own life. And I mean, one of my ideas for why he's so reclusive is because I think he's genuinely, because he didn't. Well, there's a lot of real history in his books, but he kind of like changes it and fictionalizes stuff, and he very much isn't saying real names and stuff. And but sometimes he does. I mean, he brings up Alan Dulles and Gravity's Rainbow being in fucking Switzerland. Like he'll bring up very important historical facts about major figures and stuff. But I think he genuinely was kind of freaked out, and I don't know if he still is to this day, but I think there are portions of his life where maybe he thought he was exposing too much of the full picture of how the world works. And I really think he is like very paranoid about the government and just didn't want to be like get too much attention. He genuinely is fearful of the American government. Is one of my theories for why he is one of the most reclusive authors.
Yeah, no, one thing that I want to kind of go back to is you talk about like the reason like Doc makes it away at the end, and I think this connects like PTA and pension. Is there sort of like bleeding heart humanism? Like the reason like Doc lives at the end is because he brought Japonica Fenway back to her family. Like the dad says this: the only reason you're
Oh,
alive is
okay, yeah,
because you
yeah.
helped my daughter, and he says it very skeptically, like, I have to deal with this hippie scum, but, you know, he really helped us out. And, like, this also relates to what I was talking about with, like, PTA being a dramatist versus being a comedian. And the same with Pynchon is that, like, his early books, like Crying of Lot 49, ends with, like, a sort of, like, visual, like, imprisonment for Oedipa Maas. Like, the door closes on her
Mhm.
as this auction is starting. Like, this is going to be maybe her life. Like, the book doesn't allow you to see, like, who's bidding on Pierce Inverarity's, like, you know, um, his stake in this mailing operation. And then Gravity's Rainbow, as you know, ends with, like, pure destruction. You know, just like the rocket destroying this movie theater. But, like, as his books go on, I mean, Mason and Dixon has a very sad ending. You know, he goes to Dixon's grave, if I remember
Oh
correctly.
wow, yeah, I
But
kind of
it's
remember that.
still, but it's still, like, there is this affirmation of friendship and humanity. And like I said with Vineland ends with a girl embracing her dog. Against the Day ends with, like,
Oh my
this
god,
ascent into the heavens.
Against the Day has
And
a
Bleeding Edge,
crazy ending. There's wild stuff
yeah,
going
there's
on at the end of that.
so much happening, but it is, like, very positive. So I wonder, like, as Pynchon gets older, like, is he more of a life affirming person? Because I mean, like, the pure destruction of Gravity's Rainbow is not like the affirmation of family that is Bleeding
Yeah,
Edge,
yeah,
or the
exactly.
affirmation of these relationships in Inherent Vice. Um, so it's great to see, like, and that's why I'm curious about, like, Shadow Ticket and One Battle After Another, because, like, them coming out within weeks of each other is, like, how do these two artists see the world now?
Yeah.
Because, like with Licorice Pizza, you know, there's a lot of, I think we've talked about this, Zach. There are a lot of ideas of, like, a lot of ideas of entropy in Licorice Pizza. You know, like, there's gas shortages.
Hmm.
Um, you know, child actors. A big thing with the Dave McGowan book is, like, all of these individuals are either, like, you know, the sons of military intelligence operations, or child actors who audition for the Monkees. And, like, Licorice Pizza is all about child actors who, like, start their own enterprises. Like, you know, what's he's interested in, like, Chinese restaurants, and, like, he's a business, like, upstart in that book, which I think relates to, you know, the mid 70s sort of idea of, like, all these, like, soft rock people coming into the canyon to, like, you
Right.
know, get rich quick, you know.
Yeah, didn't.
So this is going to be a very exciting summer for these artists.
Oh yeah. No, I'll just say I think really the last thing I was thinking of, because yeah, I feel like we've covered a lot of stuff, but I love the part in the weird scenes inside the canyon where Dave McGowan kind of says that Big Mama Cass knew where all the bodies were buried. Like,
Yes.
specifically her and a couple of people knew the full scope of the Manson thing and, like, what happened and how friend, because one of the big things that's strange about the Manson stuff is that Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate may have been going to, like, satanic like rituals and shit. And there may have been this
Mhm.
crazy overlap where they had maybe met Manson at a party, is kind of a theory that exists, right? Or just that Manson was better friends with people than they, like, you know, than history has kind of tried to, like, cover up. And a lot of people stayed quiet after that. But no, I mean, one of the interesting things about it, you know, I do recommend the Errol Morris doc, the Chaos doc. It's well made and it's good, but if you read the book, it's kind of disappointing because it just leaves out so much important information, like about how Vincent Bugliosi is just a complete liar and a criminal and a piece of shit, and he, like, hid evidence that, like, would have suggested different things. And I mean, he was just really shoehorning a narrative, and it ends up making all this money off his book. But on top of that, the book Chaos, I think it's in the book, maybe Tom O'Neill said it outside of the book, but he said when he was first talking to Vincent Bugliosi about the Manson killings, he said, "What's one thing that you didn't put in the book that would help me get an investigation going and I can, write my own thing?" And Vincent Bugliosi told him that when they searched the house after everyone was dead, they found a tape, and it was a tape of Roman Polanski forcing Sharon Tate to have sex with, I think, two men or maybe one man, but he was like slapping her and like making her, forcibly making her have sex with men. And this was never brought up for decades. This wasn't like reported on that this tape was in there. And that's part of the thing that's crazy with that murder is that, like Roman Polanski, treated her like shit, beat her up, was really abusive to Sharon Tate. And it's an open question. I mean, did he know? I mean, I don't quite think he knew Manson, but there's an open question because, like you're saying about like child actors and stuff, like all these different people kind of overlapped at the same time in this place. And I mean, I really think that's why Inherent Vice is why, PTA would bring this up in interviews. He'd say, what was nagging at Pynchon to make him set a book in a place he lived 40 years ago? And I think the answer is that, there's just all these things overlapping at the same time. And it's kind of suspicious. It's kind of like, how did all this come together? And then also, how are all these like serial killers popping up is like what Dave McGowan's thesis ends up being, that there are all these like serial killers in the same area. And like I was saying about the Phoenix program, McGowan says that a bunch of these I think it was maybe 10. No, I'm not going to say a name. I might say the wrong name, but there was like multiple serial killers that got put in prison that said that they killed a bunch of people in the Phoenix program. And like I'm saying, a bunch of the Phoenix program agents came back to America and started targeting the anti-war movement. So it was legit like got people that had experienced like torturing and dismembering people were like these operatives. And in Chaos, there's this crazy story from Tom O'Neill where he says there was like this guy that was like a fake hippie that worked for like the CIA or the FBI or something. I forgot his name. And he was supposedly at the Cielo Drive house after the murders happened, but before the police arrived. There's this weird guy who his family were like, yeah, he never like knew us because he was just undercover. And there are these old photos that Tom O'Neill shows. He goes, yeah, look at this. This is an FBI guy dressed to look like a hippie. And somehow he had tried to infiltrate the Manson family, like on behalf of the intelligence agencies. And somehow, some way, he was outside the Cielo Drive house looking in and seeing all the bodies on the ground. And I think may have been someone that called the cops on, like, he might have been one of the first people that reported the murders, this intelligence agent. And that's very suspicious for such a high impact event, for there just to be like intelligence agents just hanging around, like something that wasn't, so to speak, you couldn't anticipate that, right? The Mansons were going to do that. It's like, how would he know? But no, I mean, it might have just been that the house itself was a high impact kind of location where everybody was hanging out there. It's like the Spotted Dick thing where how Chong is, what's her name? Hong Chow, right? The actress.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, she's crazy. She's got Spotted Dick posters on the wall and Spotted Dick vinyls everywhere. And then Doc is like, okay, she likes dick, so what? But no,
and then he goes up to the other hippie at the other end of the room, and the first thing he says is "Spotted Dick T-shirt," and he's like, "Oh shit!" The whole place.
No,
is like
it's creepy. It's like MK Ultra. It's like she's brainwashed. People are getting brainwashed by these bands, and somehow the band doesn't recognize Owen Wilson, even though they used to be in a band together. But in the fashion of Dave McGowan talking about like the Monkees or something, all these like surf rock bands went through so many evolutions, and there were some weird situations where these bands would have all these different members that would like kind of swap in and out, and it really was like that. Like the band members literally would forget like other people because like the bands would move so quickly that you'd be like, damn, who are you again? It's like, bro, I'm your bassist. It's like, oh, okay. Or no, he's the saxophone player. It's like, oh, I'm the sax dude. It's like, wait, what? Who are you?
I mean, that's just like the nature of like being a session musician. Is like you show up to where you're paid to be,
Right.
And that was like a lot of what's in Weird Sides Inside the Canyon is like a lot of these band members, you know, they're not playing on record because they would hire session musicians like the Wrecking
Mhm.
Crew and Phil Spector's guys to like make the records, and then you pay people to be the face of the operation to go and tour.
Right.
And then this is something that kind of blew my mind in the book, is that like people were there to watch the hippies dance. They weren't there to watch the band.
Yeah, yeah. When it talked
Um,
about that one family that was kind of a Manson family before Manson, that like that group of
yeah.
people that were going to the Mothers of Invention shows and like packing it out and dancing crazy, and then they had
Hmm.
this baby like die under mysterious circumstances, and Kenneth Anger was going to cast the baby, wasn't he, to like play Satan or something
Hmm.
in a movie?
Yeah, and then he was gonna get in town like days after that baby eventually like died in a very mysterious way. Um, yeah, no, a lot of really not okay stuff involving that story. That was really painful to like read. In
Oh
fact,
yeah,
it's one of the darker parts of the book.
no, because I mean, some of this hippie stuff just like it really went wrong like after the 60s, like, you know, there it really, like I'm saying, with like Jim Jones and stuff, and then, you know, the Symbionese Liberation Army, the people that kidnapped Patty Hearst and then they kind of like brainwashed her to start robbing banks. And I
Mhm.
literally just read in the Phoenix program book that that was also Phoenix related. Like there was like a guy that was involved in Phoenix that recruited DeFreeze, who ended up being the head of the SLA that ended up kidnapping Patty Hearst. He like literally like recruited him for a specific reason to like, you know, again, just to like discredit some shit. So it's endless. Like you kind of take a second look at all kinds of stuff that was going on in the 60s, and it becomes more and more strange, honestly. Um but yeah, no, what was his name? So yeah, I mean, do we got any other thoughts?
Great movie. I actually like, because I talked to you about like when the last time you watched it
Mhm.
was, and I was going through Letterboxd earlier, and I hadn't seen it in 4 years,
Oh
so
wow.
it was a very fulfilling rewatch, and especially with like um you know, conversations with you and like other books I've read, like I was just like locking into so many aspects of the movie, and I guess Pynchon's because I guess I've read a lot more Pynchon since the last time I rewatched the movie, and I think the last time I rewatched it, I actually like I showed it to my brother Seamus,
Uh-huh.
and then immediately went to a friend's place. This was on 420, by the way, and just rewatched it again with like a whole other group of people. So um, and to get to see a print of it, I really hope I can see more PTA prints in the near future, because it's like they all exist. And I did miss the master one that was back in September. So like, yeah, I love the movie. Love Thomas Pynchon. Really excited for August and September coming up.
Right.
Because
No, yeah, I guess.
the movie comes out in September, and then the book comes out in October.
Yep. No, yeah.
It's gonna be
Last
crazy.
thing I'll say, and we didn't really even get into it too much, but yeah, I mean, if anyone loves Inherent Vice or wants to see another influence, the movie Mondo Hollywood has a lot of overlap with what we're saying too. Because I mean, he
Yeah.
literally has footage at a Mothers of Invention concert, and fucking Dave McGowan kind of raises an eyebrow about Robert Carl Cohen, this filmmaker. And I was showing Sean this incredible interview with the director of Mondo Hollywood and PTA that I used to watch over and over because Robert Carl Cohen is like really interesting. He's like an old man talking to PTA, and he just has all these great stories. And Mondo Hollywood is just this perfect documentary about the late 60s in LA. And there's just all these crazy hippies and people like of all types. And, you know, there's a lot of famous people in the movie. You know, there's like presidents, and the future Queen of England shows up, and Alfred Hitchcock pops up.
Is is there any like this movie? You can rent this movie on Amazon, right? Like it's easy to
Yeah,
see.
Mondo Hollywood, I think, is on Amazon to rent.
Okay, good, awesome.
Yeah, it's not the
Because
highest
it kind of
quality, but it still does the job. You know, it was probably shot on 16 or something.
Oh yeah, based on like when I was reading the book, I just kept thinking about this movie should be like difficult to see, but I remember I just went to your apartment and we watched it, and
Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely check it out if anyone's interested.
Yeah, Austin, you got any last ideas?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, if Inherent Vice might not be for everyone, but if you don't like it, then fuck you.
Oh man, fair. Facts King.
There was a great joke, Zach, after you left the group last night. We were talking about one battle after another, and I was just like, can't wait for it to lose so much money this
Oh yeah, I
summer.
did hear
And then my
you say
friends,
that.
well, my other friend Zach was like, "What are you talking about? It's gonna make $1 billion. Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna go to work, and all of your coworkers are gonna be like, you see the Paul Thomas Anderson, Thomas Pynchon movie,
Yeah.
and you're gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna see it. I'm gonna see it 3 more times. And that movie's gonna make $1 billion, and it's gonna change the industry, and we'll all be, in agreement that it's a great movie. Definitely, no one's gonna hate that movie.
Yeah, I'm a little bit
Uh,
nervous. I think it's definitely going to lose money, but I think it's going to be really good. But
well, it's just amazing that like Leo can because I feel like the vibe of this is like Michael DeLuca, who produced like Boogie Nights and has worked with PTA his entire career. Like he's getting all these questions about like, do you really think this is financially feasible? And he's just like, well, Leo's a big enough star where it makes sense. And I just feel like everyone's like, we need to make this happen
right,
because Leo was supposed to be Dirk Diggler.
exactly. Yeah, no, he wanted to work with Leo for a while, and that was either before or directly after Titanic when he was
It
targeting.
was right before they were
Yeah,
casting.
that's for
I
real.
think it was. I think for Leo, it was either like I do Boogie Nights or I do
Yeah,
Titanic,
isn't that
and
crazy?
yeah. So it to me, the vibe is like we need to make this happen, or else it never will. Um,
No,
and
hell yeah.
yeah, no, I even said it last night. I was like, I can't wait until 4 months when we're back like in this spot in line, seeing one battle after another in Beast Division, and yeah, no, it's. I'm like, God, I should like. I was talking to my brothers last night as well because they're like sort of Paul Thomas Anderson newbies. Like I showed them Boogie Nights back in November, I think, and they loved it. And I was just like, he has a movie with Adam Sandler. We got to watch Punch Drunk Love one of these days. And yeah, summer's coming around. I'm definitely going to rewatch Licorice Pizza. I want to revisit Magnolia because it's been like 4 years since I've seen that, and that movie's just breathtaking. Yeah, no, it's
Hell yeah.
wow.
PTA summer, hashtag Charlie XCX.
That is like that was so cool of her.
Yeah. I think
That
Cronenberg
was so
summer.
cool of her. Cronenberg summer, Ari Aster summer, but who fucking cares? Uh,
Well,
um,
I'm pretty much down to. I think that's pretty much it. So thanks for listening to Half of God's Face podcast. God bless everyone.